Welcome to the deep dive. You know, when you think about making a big change in life, maybe it's a new job or moving somewhere completely different, maybe even traveling far away, there's this really common idea, isn't there, that you go out there to sort of find yourself.
Right, the classic narrative, as if there's this authentic you just waiting under the surface, hidden somewhere.
Exactly, just waiting to be uncovered if you shake things up enough.
And that assumption, well, that's precisely what we want to unpack today, to challenge it, really.
So this is going to be a deep dive into identity, into change, and maybe most importantly, the power of context.
We're arguing that the transformation you experience, especially through something as radical as travel, it isn't really about discovery. It's more like demolition.
Demolition? That sounds intense.
It is demolition and then reconstruction. From the ground up almost.
Okay, so our mission today is to try and understand what actually happens inside us psychologically when that familiar world just vanishes. Using travel as the kind of ultimate test case.
Yeah, the ultimate trigger for shaking up our perception.
So the big question is, when you make that leap, do you really find yourself? Or is something, I don't know, far stranger, maybe more fundamental going on, something that forces you to redraw the map of your own mind?
We're going to explore this using the lens of Gestalt psychology, which can be quite unsettling, but also incredibly insightful.
Okay.
The key idea we're chasing is that the person you believe yourself to be, you know, your personality, your habits, your emotional reactions.
The everyday me.
Precisely. That me isn't some solid fixed thing. It's more like a figure.
A figure, like in art.
Exactly like in art, or in perception generally. Think of seeing a shape against a background. That shape, the figure, only makes sense because of the background.
Right, it needs contrast.
It needs contrast, and it needs stability. And that background, in Gestalt terms, we call the field, or the context.
So my identity is a figure that needs a stable field.
That's the core concept. And if you change the field dramatically, well, the figure has to change. It has to reorganize itself, often quite abruptly.
Okay, I'm trying to picture that. Think about that moment of arriving somewhere totally new. You know, you step off the plane, you're in an airport, maybe you don't speak the language.
Total disorientation.
Yeah. 1 minute you're, I don't know, a project manager, a parent, a student, someone with routines.
Someone defined by roles and predictable responses.
And the next minute, you're just standing there. A person. A figure, as you say, but the background is gone.
Completely gone. The whole structure, you built the routines, the roles, the sort of safe emotional shortcuts.
The scripts we run.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of that has just been unplugged, pulled out from the wall. We call that experience perceptual exile. And it can feel terrifying, genuinely.
I can imagine, because the field that held your identity together.
The container, yeah. It just dissolves. It's not just about seeing new things. It's like psychological zero gravity.
Zero gravity, wow.
All the usual frameworks your brain uses to, you know, save energy, to run on autopilot, they're useless. Suddenly, everything demands conscious attention. Every little interaction.
It reminds me of looking at, like, a hologram, and then someone turns off the projector. That detailed 3D image just flattens out, becomes this confused shimmer.
That's a perfect analogy. The complex figure loses its structural support. Okay, so to really get this, we need to dig into those Gestalt basics. The absolute fundamental principle is nothing exists in isolation.
Everything's connected.
Everything is relational.
Yeah.
Always. This isn't just about seeing things like visual perception. It applies right down to our psychological core. A figure, whether it's a vase in a picture, someone's face in a crowd, or even a personality trait like, say, being shy. It's only visible, only meaningful, because of the background it stands against. The field.
Right, like those classic optical illusions. Is it two faces looking at each other, or is it a vase?
Exactly, the Rubens vase.
You can't see both at the same time, can you? Your brain has to choose figure or ground.
It has to choose, and they're constantly competing for prominence. So let's apply that same idea to, well, to you. Your personality, the way you cope with stress, your sense of I, those predictable emotional loops you get into.
Yeah, the things I think of as me.
Those things aren't just internal programs running inside your head in a vacuum. They are the figure. And that figure needs a consistent background, a stable field to keep its shape. Take away that stability, disrupt the field and the figure. Well, it starts to wobble. It can't maintain its old form.
And this background, this field, it's more than just where I'm physically, right? It's bigger than that.
Oh, absolutely. Much bigger. We tend to think of the background as passive, just scenery.
Yeah.
But the Gestalt view is that the field is profoundly active.
Active? How so?
It's a dynamic system. It both supports and constrains you. It subtly, constantly dictates who you're allowed to be in that context.
Yeah.
What kind of behavior gets rewarded, what gets ignored, what gets punished even.
So it's like the rules of the game.
Exactly. The field includes things like your job's hierarchy, the unspoken rules in your family, the pace of your city, the economic pressures you're under, your friendships. It's the whole web.
Wow.
It's the entire architecture of expectation that holds your specific figure, your way of being in place. The field basically tells your figure what shape it needs to have to function, to be accepted, to feel safe within that specific world.
So when people feel stuck, like they're in a rut, it might not just be them, their character, it could be the field.
It could very well be the field exerting this immense, unseen pressure, holding that figure rigidly in place.
Like gravity.
Like gravity, yes. The structure is maintained by the field, and the second that field disappears or radically changes, poof, the figure is instantly destabilized.
Think about the sheer sensory shock of really different travel. Like going from your comfy office chair you've sat in for years,
Known, predictable, molded to you.
to suddenly sitting on a hard, maybe wobbly bamboo stool on a dusty floor somewhere.
Or the smell. The controlled, conditioned air and maybe faint printer toner.
Replaced by thick humidity, maybe wood smoke, spices you can't name, grains.
Yes. The entire sensory landscape changes. The structure that validated and supported your previous figure is just gone.
So if the field is this silent director of who I am, what happens when I actually leave it? You said earlier, and it really struck me, that travel doesn't change you, it deletes you. Can you unpack that a bit more? It sounds so final.
It feels final in the moment. It's dramatic language, I admit, but I think it gets closer to the psychological reality than finding yourself.
Okay.
When you step into a truly foreign field, one that's maybe chaotic, unpredictable, or just operates on totally different assumptions, you don't just adapt bit by bit. The very container that defined yourself, the one held stable by the old field, it basically evaporates.
It evaporates.
The figure you were back home, maybe the super efficient planner, or the slightly anxious people pleaser, or the witty one at parties, that figure relied on cues, on feedback loops that simply don't exist anymore in the new place.
So it becomes useless.
It becomes maladaptive, doesn't work. So you're forced, really, to lose that self, to let it dissolve, because the support system, the scaffolding, is gone. Psychological survival demands that a new figure emerges, almost spontaneously.
Let's make this concrete with Anna's story. You mentioned her earlier. In Berlin, she was, what, defined by her job.
Yes, very much so. Her figure in Berlin was shaped by the German corporate environment. Quiet, incredibly meticulous, never speaking out of turn, folding her hands neatly in meetings.
Okay, I can picture that. Competent, but unobtrusive.
Exactly. Pleasant invisibility, you could call it. A perfect background figure, in a way, that helped stabilize the professional field she was in. It rewarded that structured, non-disruptive competence.
So that figure worked well there.
It was functional, yes.
Right.
But then she decides to travel alone, no fixed plans, to Morocco.
Big change.
Huge change. Total field interruption. She lands in the middle of Marrakech souk. High energy, sensory overload, constant negotiation, noise, crowds.
The opposite of quiet German efficiency.
Completely. This new field operates on immediacy, on assertiveness, on reading people quickly. It doesn't reward quiet compliance. In fact, it kind of penalizes hesitation.
And then the classic scenario happens. A shopkeeper tries to rip her off, massively overcharge her.
Right. And in that moment, the old figure, the polite, non-confrontational Berlin professional, is worse than useless. It invites exploitation in this field.
So what happens? Does she just pay?
No. Something else kicks in, something entirely unfamiliar to her. She finds herself standing her ground, speaking firmly, clearly, maintaining eye contact, pushing back on the price with a kind of controlled force she didn't know she had.
Wow.
She negotiates successfully, walks away, and the account says her hands were shaking afterwards.
From fear, adrenaline.
That's what you'd expect, right? But she described it differently. It wasn't shaking from fear of the argument, it was shaking from the shock of recognition.
Recognition. Of what?
Of herself, of this capacity for assertion, this strength that had literally never emerged before because her previous field never demanded it, maybe even subtly suppressed it.
That distinction recognition, not fear, that feels really important.
It's the absolute core of this Gestalt principle in action. This wasn't personal growth in the usual sense, like she'd read a self-help book or gone to assertiveness training.
Right. It wasn't planned.
It was perceptual restructuring on the fly. The new environment, the field, demanded a different figure for survival in that specific interaction. Her polite Berlin figure was useless. The assertive figure was the only one that could complete the gestalt, the pattern of successfully navigating the negotiation.
So the terrifying, but maybe also liberating, truth that comes out of this is we aren't who we think we are. We are who our environment allows or even forces us to be.
That's the psychological earthquake, yes.
Yeah.
It shakes the foundations of a fixed self. Let's think about your everyday figure, the way you act, think, feel as being perfectly suited to the painting it lives in. The colors match, the style fits.
Okay.
Now imagine someone cuts that figure out with scissors and just pastes onto a completely different canvas, a wildly different one, a desert landscape maybe, or a chaotic train station in Mumbai at 3 a.m.
It wouldn't fit. It would look wrong. The old rules wouldn't apply.
Exactly. The old scripts, the safety nets, the predictable responses, they're all gone. And who or what emerges in that moment? It's terrifyingly fluid. It's not the person you plan to be. It's the figure demanded instantaneously by that alien field.
That idea of the self being so impermanent, that's the scary part.
It is. But maybe it's also the very mechanism that allows for real change.
Okay, so this really pushes back hard against that common idea of finding your true self, doesn't it? If the confident, maybe more assertive travel self that emerges isn't the real me finally breaking free, then what? What is it? What does the Gestalt view actually leave room for? Is there anything solid underneath?
It suggests, and this is the radical part, that maybe there isn't a fixed foundational core essence hiding in there.
No true self.
Not in the sense of a static object, no. There's only the dynamic process. The figure constantly reshaping itself in relation to the field. Identity isn't a noun, it's more like a verb, an ongoing event.
An event, huh?
And travel, or any major life disruption, works by destroying the old field, which then forces a kind of necessary disloyalty.
Disloyalty to whom?
To the old self. To the version of you that fit neatly into the previous context. The version that was perhaps designed to please your boss, or fit the image on your social media, or meet your family's expectations. You have to become unfaithful to that safe, predictable figure because it simply doesn't work anymore.
Oh, hang on. What about things that feel really deep-seated, like personality traits we seem to be born with, or the impact of, say, childhood trauma? Those feel like they travel with us, regardless of the field. Don't they shape the figures we become no matter where we are?
That's a really crucial point. And the Gestalt model doesn't ignore those things, but it reframes them. Those inherited tendencies or past traumas aren't seen as a fixed essence. They're more like initial conditions. Yeah, they represent the first, often deeply ingrained figures and fields we learned. Trauma, for instance, often creates what Gestalt therapy calls an unfinished situation, or an incomplete Gestalt. It forces the creation of a protective figure that can become very rigid.
Right, a coping mechanism that gets stuck.
Exactly. But here's the key. Even that rigidity, that deeply ingrained pattern, is usually only maintained because the current field, our everyday life, either allows it, reinforces it, or maybe even implicitly requires it to persist.
So the context still plays a role, even with deep patterns.
Absolutely. Trauma shapes our choices, our sensitivities, yes. But the current context often props up the survival strategies that the trauma originally created. When the field collapses, like in radical travel, even those rigid trauma-based figures can be destabilized. They lose their usual support.
Okay, that makes sense. So when people come back from a big trip feeling changed, it's not that they found the real them. It's more like they lost the version of themselves that only existed back home.
Precisely. They experienced a profound shedding, a loss, of the figure that was dependent on the old field. And the figure that survived the trip, the one that emerged in the new context, feels, well, different. Raw, maybe, unpolished, uncertain even. But it worked there. It survived the reorganization.
Okay. And how does the mind actually do this reorganization?
Well, our brain is constantly managing what we call the perceptual field. Think of it as this dynamic space swirling with sensory input, our current roles, other people's expectations, our own feelings, memories.
It's a lot.
It's a huge amount. And perception, crucially, is selective. It has to be. It filters out most of the noise so we can focus on the figure that's relevant to whatever we're trying to do right now. It's optimized for habit and survival.
Keeps us focused on the task at hand.
Keeps us functional, saves energy. But travel, or any major disruption. It's like a bomb going off in that filtering system.
The ultimate filter buster, yeah.
Exactly. When the familiar context and habits are stripped away, the field destabilizes. The usual filters break down. The old figures, the ones that relied on those filters, they start to collapse because their cues are gone.
So the mind starts scrambling.
It goes into this state of necessary scrambling, a dynamic disorganization. It sounds bad, like a breakdown, but it's not really a failure. It's the mind actively engaging in radical reconfiguration. It has to, because the old rules of perception, the old ways of organizing reality have been suspended.
And what drives that? What forces the reconfiguration?
The fundamental driver deep in our psychological wiring is the principle of closure.
Closure. Okay, let's spend a minute on this. It feels important.
It's absolutely foundational in Gestalt theory. Basically, the mind hates fragmentation. It has this deep innate drive towards wholeness, completion, pattern.
It wants things to make sense.
Desperately. It will literally fill in the gaps. You see a circle with a small break in it, your brain automatically closes the gap, you hear half a sentence, your mind often completes it. It will even ignore evidence that contradicts a pattern it wants to see just to maintain that feeling of stability, of closure.
It's a survival mechanism. Saves energy.
Definitely saves cognitive energy. And it provides emotional stability too. A lot of anxiety, from a Gestalt perspective, comes from the tension of incomplete patterns, of unfinished business, of gestalts that aren't closed.
Okay, so in our normal everyday lives, this closure principle works pretty well behind the scenes, keeps things running smoothly.
It's efficient. Constant, silent pattern matching. But now, imagine dropping that pattern-seeking mind into a truly foreign field.
Like the Moroccan souk again, or somewhere completely alien.
Right. Unfamiliar language you can't understand, sounds that are dissonant or jarring, social cues that make no sense, visual patterns that are broken or chaotic. In that situation, closure becomes impossible using the old rules.
The mind tries to make sense of it, but can't.
It tries. Oh, it tries. Driven by that biological hunger for wholeness, it goes into overdrive. It keeps trying to oppose the OELD patterns, the familiar gestalt, onto the new reality.
Trying to fit a square peg in a round hole?
Exactly. And it fails. Repeatedly. Because the sensory input, the reality on the ground, just keeps rejecting the old template. The pieces don't fit the puzzle you expect.
So, what happens then? Does the mind just give up?
Eventually, yes.
Yeah.
That's the moment of transformation. It's born from a kind of cognitive exhaustion. The mind stops trying to force it, stops trying to fix the picture or complete the old pattern. It has to surrender to the fragmentation.
Surrender to the chaos.
And in that moment of surrender, something new can begin. Because the fundamental drive for wholeness is still there, the mind is compelled to start constructing a new W structure, a new way of organizing perception, a new way of being that actually fits the current chaotic reality. It reorganizes itself around the immediate input rather than fighting it.
We see this with Leo, right? The software engineer in Tokyo.
Yes, Leo's a perfect example. His figure in Tokyo is all about control, logic, precision, methodical. His life, his perceptual field, is structured like code-closed loops, optimized for efficiency.
Logic is his field.
Absolutely. Then he travels to Varanasi.
Which is not logical.
Not remotely. It's the embodiment of beautiful, terrifying, unsystematized chaos. Cows wandering in traffic, open cremations by the river, intense smells, noise, crowds, colors. There's no algorithm for Varanasi.
So his usual way of being, the problem solver, the engineer.
He's completely useless. There's no problem here to optimize or debug. It's just this overwhelming flood of raw sensory experience, and he has no manual for it.
What does he do? Panic.
Internally, yes.
Yeah.
He describes that silent panic. His mind is desperately trying to impose order, to analyze, categorize, create some kind of closure, make it make sense according to his old rules, but it's impossible.
The field resists.
The chaos just wins. The field refuses to conform. After days of this intense internal struggle, he just stops. He stops trying to fix it, stops trying to understand it intellectually, stops demanding closure.
He lets go.
He lets go. He allows the dust, the noise, the smells, the sheer presence of the place, the burning ghats, the river, the people to just wash over him. Without judgment, without analysis, he stops demanding structure.
And what emerges when he stops fighting the field?
What emerges is a completely different figure. Radically unstructured, just presence. He stops being the software engineer trying to fix Varanasi. He's simply there, sitting by the Ganges, experiencing.
Wow.
That's classic Gestalt collapse. The old structure failing, followed by spontaneous reorganization. His mind, forced by the field's refusal to fit the old pattern, had to build a new way to be whole. Not through control this time, but through surrender, through presence.
This feeling people get when traveling, of being intensely alive, intensely present, it must tie into how we pay attention, right?
But you said earlier that attention isn't really something we control, like a spotlight. That feels counterintuitive.
It definitely pushes against the common sort of ego-driven idea of attention, doesn't it? The mindfulness industry is built on controlling the spotlight.
Right. Focus your attention here, not there.
But from a Gestalt perspective, attention is more like something that gets captured. It's fundamentally determined by the structure of the field itself, what stands out, what's the figure against the ground right now. That's where attention goes.
So the field directs our attention.
Largely, yes. In our normal everyday lives, our field is structured by habit, by perceived threats, by obligations, things we have to pay attention to for functional survival in that context.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, think about being at work. The urgent ping of your boss's email arrives. Instantly, that becomes the figure. It demands your attention. Meanwhile, the beautiful sunlight slanting through the window, maybe the sound of birds outside, completely fades into the background. You don't even notice it.
Exactly, it becomes passive background. You didn't consciously choose to ignore the sunlight. The field, structured by workplace demands and learned urgency, made the email the dominant figure. The field chose for you.
Because attention follows habit and perceived importance within that specific field.
Precisely. It's incredibly energy efficient for the brain most of the time. But travel, or any significant field disruption, it shatters those habitual anchors.
Because nothing is habitual anymore.
Right. Everything is new. You have to consciously navigate every single thing, crossing the street, ordering food, understanding social cues. Nothing runs on autopilot. So attention is suddenly untethered, liberated from its usual duties.
And that's the moment of change.
That's attentional reconfiguration. Your mind, deprived of the familiar landmarks and routines, starts attending to what is actually present, what is immediate.
Not what's expected or what's on the to-do list.
Exactly. It might be the specific texture of a stranger's laugh, the rhythm of a language you don't understand, the way rain smells on hot stone.
Yeah.
You're not reacting based on past patterns. You're responding to the immediacy of life unfolding.
And that's why we feel more alive, because our attention is finally off its leash.
That's a huge part of it. Our attention is wild, free, engaged with novelty. And here's the deep connection. Moment by moment, you are what you attend to. If your attention shifts radically, your very experience of being, your figure, shifts with it.
Okay. And this connects to those moments of sudden understanding, those aha moments, what Gestalt calls insight.
Yes. Insight, in Gestalt terms, isn't just figuring something out intellectually. It's not connecting dots logically. It's a sudden, often wordless realization that happens when the entire field, internal and external, restructures itself.
It's like the pieces of a puzzle suddenly clicking into place.
Exactly. That feeling of, now I see. It's often accompanied by a physical sensation like a gasp or a release of tension. You literally perceive the situation differently.
And travel, by breaking the old field, creates the perfect conditions for this.
It creates the perfect rupture. Rupture of field, rupture of habit, rupture of the old figure. It primes the system for these spontaneous restructurings, for insight.
Let's look at Maria, the lawyer in London. Her figure was built on, what, control? Analysis?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Sharp, rational, analytical, solving problems, managing risk. Her whole way of being, her figure, was one of tight intellectual containment. A highly structured field requires a highly structured figure.
And then she goes somewhere completely different. The Amazon.
Right. And participates in an ayahuasca ceremony. Talk about a field interruption.
Yeah.
Logic is suspended. Her professional identity means nothing there. Normal sensory input is altered.
A field completely changes structure.
Fundamentally, the drug acts as a powerful catalyst, forcing a collapse of her usual perceptual structures. That controlled, contained figure of the lawyer just dissolved. It has no footing in this new field.
And what comes up when the lawyer figure dissolves?
Something from the deep background. An incomplete gestalt. An unfinished experience that the lawyer figure had been, perhaps unconsciously, designed to protect or suppress. In her case, it was the raw figure of the abandoned child.
Wow. So not just a memory.
Much more than memory. It was the felt experience rising to the surface, the fear, the vulnerability, the neediness, because the new field, the altered state, lacked the structure and the defenses needed to keep it buried. Her London life, the lawyer field, required that child figure stay hidden. The Amazon field did not.
So the insight she gained wasn't just, oh, I had some childhood issues.
No, it was far more profound and embodied than that. It was the sudden gut-level realization. My entire adult life, this complex lawyer persona I've built, it's been a fortress. a highly sophisticated defense mechanism designed solely to protect that terrified, abandoned child inside. And maybe that fortress isn't necessary anymore.
That's field-induced insight. The change in the field allowed the underlying, unresolved pattern to emerge and be seen differently.
Precisely. The lawyer figure was only truly functional in service of an old, perhaps now obsolete, emotional survival strategy.
This is leading us towards something you mentioned earlier, maybe the most mind-bending concept. Isomorphism, the idea that our inner world mirrors the outer world.
Yes, isomorphism is, I think, the conceptual glue holding much of this together. It suggests that the structure of your inner experience, your thoughts, feelings, even your physical posture, tends to mirror the structure of the external field you're in.
Okay,
Yeah.
break that down. Inner mirrors outer.
Think simple first. You feel sad, your posture might slump, become heavy. You feel joyful, you might stand taller, feel lighter, more expansive. Your inner state is reflected in your physical form.
Right, that makes sense.
But isomorphism goes deeper. It suggests the structure of your thoughts, the way you process information, also tends to align with the structure of your environment.
So if I work in a really rigid, hierarchical, data-driven company,
A field optimized for linearity, metrics, clear boundaries.
my thinking might become more rigid, more linear, more compartmentalized, less able to see the big picture.
That's the idea. You might find yourself getting stressed by ambiguity, needing clear answers, organizing everything into boxes, because your inner processing starts to mimic the structure of the field you inhabit most of the time.
And conversely, if I spend time in a more organic, maybe chaotic environment, like nature or that marketplace,
A field that's nonlinear, interconnected, maybe unpredictable, your cognitive structure might soften, you might become more comfortable with ambiguity, think more holistically, see connections you missed before.
because my inner structure is adapting to reflect the outer structure.
You are not separate from your environment. You are, in a way, an expression of it. We're in constant dialogue, and this leads to that philosophical earthquake we talked about.
So self isn't a noun.
It's a verb. It's not a thing you have, it's a thing you do. Identity is an activity, a constant happening, an event that emerges moment by moment in dialogue with the field, with context.
Wow. Okay, so if that's true, the whole goal changes, doesn't it? It stops being about searching for some hidden true self.
Exactly. The focus shifts dramatically. It becomes about participating consciously in your own ongoing becoming. By recognizing the immense power of the field,
Hmm.
and then choosing which fields you expose yourself to, knowing that they will inevitably shape the figure you become. Freedom isn't being free from influence, it's choosing the influences, choosing the structures that shape you.
This brings us right back to coming home after a big trip. That feeling, many people experience it. You feel amazing, changed, confident, maybe more open while you're away.
The travel self feels great.
Yeah. And then you get back home, back into the old routine, the old environment, and within weeks, maybe days, that vibrant travel self starts to fade.
It seems to evaporate.
And there's this narrative, isn't there, that it's a personal failure, I didn't integrate it properly, or I lost it, or it wasn't real.
Exactly. We beat ourselves up about it. But the Gestalt perspective offers such relief here.
Yeah.
Necessary relief.
So,
Because that vibrant, spontaneous travel self, it was a temporary configuration, a brilliant, adaptive figure perfectly suited to the alien field you were in.
it wasn't the real me unlocked.
It was a real figure, but one generated by that specific field. It fades when you return home because the field changes back. The old, familiar, maybe more rigid structure of home reasserts itself, and that new figure simply doesn't get the reinforcement, the environmental support it needs to survive there.
So, you didn't fail, you just changed fields.
You didn't fail.
Hmm.
You witnessed firsthand the undeniable truth. Identity is fluid, it's context dependent, it's a process. Seeing that figure fade isn't failure, it's data. It shows you how powerfully the field shapes the figure.
Okay, that is liberating. But the power in that realization is, what if I can't just keep the travel self, what's the point?
The power is realizing you don't necessarily need the plane ticket to access the mechanism of change.
Yeah.
What you experienced through travel was field interruption, a rupture in the usual perceptual fabric. And that mechanism can be triggered anywhere.
You don't need Patagonia, you can do it in your kitchen.
Potentially, yes. The mechanism, perceptual collapse,
Yeah.
spontaneous reorganization, the emergence of a new figure, it's universal. It depends on disrupting the stability of the current field, wherever you are.
Okay, so let's get practical. How do you consciously choose or disrupt your field without flying halfway around the world? beyond just, take a different route home from work?
Taking a different route is a tiny start, but deeper interruption requires more deliberate action. The core principle is force your attention away from the expected and deliberately deprive the old habitual figure of its usual props and reinforcements.
Make the old way of being awkward or even impossible.
Exactly. So if your dominant figure relies heavily on, say, logic and efficiency, deliberately choose to engage with a field that actively resists those qualities. Maybe dedicate time to something utterly non-productive, with no goal or metric, like unstructured play, doodling, dancing badly, just sitting and watching clouds without labeling them. Or if your field is very verbal and cognitive, try something purely sensory, maybe blindfolded eating, or focusing only on the sounds in your environment for 10 minutes, or yes, even a sensory deprivation tank if that's accessible.
The aim is to make the old coping strategies, the old fresh, feel useless or out of place.
Yes. So the system has to reconfigure. You're intentionally creating a small-scale version of that perceptual exile, letting silence become the field, or maybe controlled chaos, and then just observing, watching what figure, what impulse, what feeling emerges when the usual structure is absent.
And when that new figure or impulse or response starts to emerge, how do we know if it's good or right? How do we evaluate it?
See, that's where the question itself needs to change. We have to stop asking that exhausting, impossible question. Is this the real me?
Because the real me is a fiction, a static idea.
Exactly. The truly empowering question becomes, do I want to live from this figure? Does this figure that emerged in the rupture, maybe quieter, maybe bolder, maybe more present, maybe more creative, does it feel more aligned, more capable, more alive in this context?
And if the answer is yes, if I like this emerging figure,
then the task shifts. It's no longer about finding yourself or even improving yourself. It becomes about field construction, about consciously curating, choosing, building an environment, physical, social, cognitive, that actively supports and reinforces that preferred figure. You start building the field that allows the figure you value to flourish.
Okay. This leads to that final, really strange feeling people often report when they come back from being away for a while, that dissonance.
Yes. The feeling that everything looks the same, the streets, the shops, your apartment, maybe even the people, but somehow you don't fit anymore. It feels
off.
Uncomfortable.
What is that? If the field is the same, why does it feel different?
Because you are not the same. That dissonance is the tangible proof that the field you carry inside you has fundamentally changed.
The inner field.
Yes, your perceptual habits, the neural pathways that supported the old figure, they've been jostled, disrupted, reorganized by the experience abroad. You are literally perceiving differently, attending differently, responding differently, even if the external cues are familiar.
So the figure that traveled and adapted
no longer quite fits the contours of the old familiar field back home. The traveler realizes they weren't just a person in the field. They became a new kind of field themselves, a new filter that traveled back with them.
Wow. And that friction, that discomfort.
That dissonance isn't failure. It's not a sign you did something wrong or that the change wasn't real. It is the necessary, vital tension of evolution. It's a sign that growth has occurred. The internal journey continues as the new figure, the changed internal field, negotiates its existence within the old external context.
This has been, well, quite the journey just talking about it. It feels both liberating and deeply challenging. If we try to boil down this Gestalt truth about identity, the freedom isn't in finally arriving at yourself. That fixed, perfect core self
is a beautiful but ultimately limiting fiction.
So the real freedom comes from what?
From knowing. Knowing deeply, maybe even in your bones, that the self is a process, always in motion. It's field-dependent, it's shaped by where your attention goes, it's constantly seeking closure and wholeness, and it's capable of spontaneous reorganization when the conditions are right. Identity is a happening, not a destination.
It completely reframes the quest then. You stop asking that endless, often frustrating question, who am I really?
And you start asking, with a sense of real agency, what field am I currently in?
And maybe even more powerfully.
What field do I choose or create next?
Because you're not a static portrait, listener, waiting for the right frame.
No, you're more like a weather system, constantly shifting. You're a river carving its path. You are the field traveling through itself.
So the journey never really ends.
Never. Because you are still becoming, still responding, still reorganizing. The fascinating question then becomes, what new figure, perhaps magnificent, perhaps unexpected, will emerge when you consciously choose your next field? even if that next field is just 5 minutes of deliberate silence today.
You won't know until you step into it.
You won't know. And that slight tremble of uncertainty, that delicious, maybe slightly terrifying unknown, that's the beginning of everything.